I want to tell you about one of my athletes, someone who had spent years, 7 years in fact, prior to working with me, chasing a Boston qualifier. This past year, she had the best training cycle of her life, the highest mileage she's ever run, the best long runs, fastest tempo sessions, best MP sessions, and she hit the start of the taper feeling genuinely incredible. But then the taper started. By the end of week 1, she was convinced that her training was fake. The watch must have been lying to her. Her legs felt dead all of a sudden. She was sleeping terribly. There was a minor ache in her knee that she was certain was probably a stress fracture. Her easy runs felt harder than her tempo runs had 2 weeks before. And the morning of race day, she texted me at like 5 a.m. I feel like garbage. I don't think I have it today. Fast forward a couple hours later, she ran a 6-minute PR, qualified for Boston with more than a couple minutes to spare. What she experienced during the taper has a name. It has a clinical explanation. And if you don't understand what's actually happening, it will sabotage you. Not because taper is hard, but rather because nobody tells you the truth about what the taper does to your body and your brain. If you're new here, I'm Brant Stachel. I'm a run coach. I'm a registered psychotherapist. I've coached over 1,500 athletes at this point through their tapers. And today I'm going to give you kind of a complete framework of what's happening physiologically in your body and why your brain starts to go haywire. Let's start with the physiology, because most runners have a fundamentally incorrect understanding of what the taper actually is. Taper is not rest. The taper is a period of reduced training. The training load is designed to allow your body to achieve the peak physiological adaptation before the race. Simple, I know, right? You've spent 10, 12, 16, 20 weeks, if you're planning for a marathon, creating training stress, breaking down muscle fibers, depleting glycogen, accumulating all the fatigue, the miles. The taper is when you reduce the stress load so that the adaptation can finally complete. So here's what the research actually shows is happening when you properly structure your taper. The first adaptation is glycogen supercompensation. When you reduce your training volume significantly while maintaining some of the intensity, and that's key, your muscles supercompensate. They store more glycogen than a normal baseline level. This is why race day energy often feels categorically different from any training run you've experienced. You're running on a tank that's actually fuller than usual. The second adaptation is neuromuscular restoration. High training loads create neuromuscular fatigue. Your nervous system's ability to recruit muscle fibers efficiently becomes impaired. And during the taper, neuromuscular efficiency restores or often exceeds your training baseline. This is why your race day pace can feel so much easier than the effort that felt in training. Your muscles haven't changed, your nervous system has reset. The third adaptation is immune system recovery. Heavy training suppresses your immune function. Proper tapers allow immune markers to normalize, which matters because racing on a suppressed immune system increases inflammation and decreases your ability to then sustain the output in the later miles of the race. The research on structure for a marathon and an optimal taper is 2 to 3 weeks, and there is some individual variability, of course. And the volume reductions depend on the person. But generally, I like to go down to about 75% and then 60%. And then the last week, we'll see it's a little all over the place depending on travel and such. The key that most athletes miss, I find, is you do not eliminate the quality sessions in your taper. You reduce the volume of those sessions, but you keep them in there to stay sharp and ready for race day. The most common mistake I see is going into full rest mode. No running, just waiting, or staying at high volume because you're scared of losing fitness. Both are wrong. Both lead to the same outcome, arriving at race day either deconditioned or fatigued. And both lead directly into what I call taper madness. And I'll explain that now because this is where it gets a little bit clinical. So taper madness is real. I'm going to use that casual term, but I want to give you the clinical explanation because understanding it changes potentially how you're going to navigate it. So during high training loads, your body produces elevated levels of endorphins and other neurochemicals associated with stress tolerance and positive mood. High training athletes also develop strong behavioral routines daily. The habit of daily mileage becomes almost a regulation mechanism for anxiety and stress and any depressive thoughts. Running is not just training, it's also how you manage your nervous system for most of us. When you dramatically reduce training volume in a taper, a handful of things happen here neurologically. Your endorphin production drops, your behavioral regulation routine is disrupted, and your body begins adapting to the lower load. This then manifests as a temporary fatigue, unusual muscle tension, muscle sensations, and altered sleep. Your brain now looks at this and interprets this neurochemical shift as a threat. The body wants to always maintain homeostasis. This is different. And a threat-activated brain, like you're starting to get in your taper, starts scanning for evidence everywhere that something must be wrong. Every unusual sensation in your legs becomes a potential injury. Normal taper fatigue becomes proof that you're underprepared. The fitness you've built starts to feel like it's evaporating. This is not irrational. Your brain is doing exactly what a well-designed threat detection system should do when inputs change dramatically. It's just catastrophically unhelpful in the context of getting ready for your biggest race. So I've had athletes taper before and become so convinced that they had a stress fracture that they literally went to a doctor and got an x-ray and were cleared and then ran personal best. I've had athletes who are certain they were overtrained who raced perfectly. I've had athletes sleep 10 hours the night before a race because their anxiety about not sleeping manifested as excessive sleep and they ran great. The pattern is consistent. Your mind creates an urgency and a threat during the taper because the reduction in training removes the structures that normally regulate anxiety. Understanding this doesn't make taper madness disappear, of course, I understand what you're thinking here, but it completely should change your relationship to it. So let's reframe it a little bit. Instead of I feel terrible, something must be wrong, you can think I'm experiencing taper madness. This is normal. This is expected. This is actually evidence that I trained hard enough to notice the difference. Quick thing here before we go further, if you want to know exactly where your marathon prep stands right now, as you're deep in your build and you're thinking about taper, I built a free quiz. It takes about 2 minutes and it's called the Marathon Readiness Quiz. It will give you a personalized breakdown of what you need to work on. The link is in the description. Take it for your next race and now we'll get back to the conversation. So here's the protocol that I use when tapering and talking to athletes in my clinical practice. First, I always want to help athletes understand what's going on so we can name it, we can recognize it when it's happening. This is how we start to fight back about your brain. So here's the protocol. As an example, I'm going to use a peak training week of 70 miles as the reference. This should scale proportionally for your own volume and own races. So 3 weeks out, let's say, when we might start the taper, we're going to drop the volume by about 15 to 25%. So if you peaked at 70, do the math, you're going to be down around 48 to 50 miles, give or take. I want you to be sure that you maintain those key quality sessions, but reduce your volume a bit. So as an example, if typically you would do a 6-mile tempo run, you could do a 4-mile tempo run. I'm not giving you exactly the workouts I prescribe. I'm trying to put them in a general language so we can share an understanding here. The pace stays sharp, but the volume drops. Your long run might drop from 2 hours and 45 minutes to 2 hours. The purpose of this run is not to build fitness anymore. It's to maintain the neuromuscular rhythm, the muscular tension, and to build confidence. Run it easy if that's what the plan calls for. Do not attempt to race your training long run a couple weeks out to prove. We do not want to pull the carrots up to see if they're ready because you cannot put them back. 2 weeks out, we're going to drop the volume another 10 to 15%, depending on the person, how many tapers you've done, but that's roughly it. This becomes your reference 2 weeks out. This is where I find a lot of athletes get antsy. They get unsure. They start pushing too hard in sessions. They start thinking they haven't done enough, so they try to push. Unfortunately, at the same time, our quality sessions are getting shorter, but we want to keep the same pace and stay sharp. Generally, I won't go over about 25 to 30 minutes of quality work in this week. As I noted, this is where the madness really peaks. You're going to feel heavy. You might feel slow. Your legs are probably going to feel genuinely wrong. This is normal. It's expected. Don't add mileage because you're scared. I promise it will not help. One tool that I like to use during this time period with my athletes is actually have them go back to their training log, be it Strava, written, whatever your preference is. Look at your best 5 training sessions from the entire cycle. Physically, like written out or on the screen, I suppose, if it's Strava, the paces, how it felt. This is the concrete evidence that we want as athletes when we're seeking for control against that threat narrative that your brain is running. Your brain says you're not ready, but your training says otherwise. We want to believe the log. We want to believe the training. Facts over feelings when we get into the taper. So race week, day to day, I'm going to give you a sample taper plan that I use for a marathoner running in and around the 70 miles number that we talked about. And so we're dropping down quite a bit here. Monday might be 45, 50-ish minutes, easy pace, super easy. Please keep them easy this week. Tuesday, short shakeout workout, 15-minute warm up, 4x4 minutes at tempo on a minute. It's not really a workout. It's kind of just confirmation, prepping the neuromuscular system, what race pace feels like, give or take. You could slow it to marathon pace if you'd like, so it doesn't feel foreign. 10 to 20 minute warm up, nothing crazy. We don't want to be building fatigue here. We're not testing, we're confirming and prepping. Wednesday, I might have some athletes take the Wednesday off. Some might do 40-ish minutes. Thursday, 30 to 40 minutes. Friday, I like to put in some strides here, but in a really structured way. So I might do 10-minute warm up. 8 times 40 seconds at 5K effort, 40 seconds E-pace. We want to keep those recoveries kind of brisk because we don't want you pushing those strides too hard. 10-minute warm down. Saturday, 20 minutes, nothing crazy. You're just reminding the body that you're here and you're training. Sunday, race day. So let's talk about race week behaviors here now that we've got the taper and the structural pieces going down to the training. There's 4 behavioral rules you can think of for race week that have almost nothing to do with your training, but everything to do with the result that you're going to get on race day. First one, sleep. We all think about this as runners all the time. Don't make sleep your enemy. The research is clear. One poor night of sleep the night before a race has minimal impact on the endurance performance. The anxiety about not sleeping is more damaging than the sleep loss itself. Instead, we want to bank sleep earlier in the week. We know that this carries over. So let the Saturday night be what the Saturday night is. When it comes to nutrition, I see this a lot, especially for people who travel to races in the bigger majors. Nutrition in the last week is not a time for experimentation. Please eat what you know. Book your reservation for the night before a race for dinner long in advance. Know the menu. Eat similar to what you eat. We are going to obviously increase the carbohydrates. If you're interested, I have a carbohydrate guide that breaks down the carbs you need, examples, and everything. You can download it for free. Your muscles here are in supercompensation mode for glycogen, and it's already happening with the decreased training. So we want to up it completely and do a normal training protocol that we would for carbohydrate loading, and then you will benefit. The third one, movement. Stay mobile, short walks, easy walks, gentle movement. I see a lot of athletes get tight because we're used to moving a lot, but sitting completely for 2-3 days before a marathon isn't rest. It's probably going to tighten you up in stagnation. So gentle movement. This also helps regulate anxiety on race week. Here's one that's often overlooked. The inputs. Avoid dramatic conversations, high stakes decisions, emotional triggers in race week. I see too many athletes start to have these conversations with their friends, their training partners, their spouses, and it just becomes a blow up. So if you have any control over it, don't. Your nervous system is primed already and it's sensitive for all the changes we've talked about already. Protect your mental environment the same way you protect your physical legs. So here's what I want you to remember. The taper, not a test. It's not trying to prove your fitness. Your fitness was already built. It's there. It will be there on race day. It's a test rather of your ability to trust the process, tolerate uncertainty, and stay present when your brain is generating worst case scenarios and searching for evidence that things are going to break down everywhere. The athletes who nail their taper are not the ones who feel the best going into it on race day. They're the ones who expect the taper madness, recognize it, and when it shows up, they don't react by abandoning the plan. Your body is ready, your brain just needs to catch up. If this kind of science-based coaching is useful to you, please hit the subscribe. I'm going to try and drop videos every week. No fluff, no filler. As I noted before, I've built the marathon readiness quiz. It helps you with your prep. It's free. You will get it just by filling it out. It takes less than 2 minutes. I'd encourage you, drop a comment, what week of your taper in, what questions you have about your taper. Tell me how your taper madness stories. I try to respond to everyone. Happy training.